Receivership is so hard because it requires you to put aside what you think they want and they need and actually go into what is their heart asking for. A lot of the times we give to fix someone else or because we want to be the good person based on a blueprint of what we grew up, not recognizing we don't see the other person. Receivership is the manifestation of actually seeing, hearing, and understanding the person you're in relationship with. And if the person that you're giving to doesn't feel that you see them, you hear them, you understand them, they can't receive your love. But yet here's the irony. When you are in a spiritual journey and you love yourself so much, you're not seeking understanding from that other person. You're not seeking to be seen by the other person. You're not seeking to be heard by the other person. You're seeking to be seen, heard, and understood by you with your higher self. That is a different level of love now. Because when you're so whole for yourself, you can really actually receive love how other people give it.
Wow. So if you were, if you used to the patterns of being the giver or the one that gives more in the relationship, what's the tips or how do you shift from? Is it spending more time receiving? Is that the key, or is that? Are there any insights that you can share? Welcome to another episode of the Awakening Entrepreneur podcast. I've taken a hiatus from doing podcast interview for at least since March, and now we're in August. So don't be deceived by my black hair and my Asian look and thinking that I'm good at maths. I think that's 5 months. But part of the journey that I went through, as I've shared with you, is that I got a calling. I've never worked a full-time job my whole life, and then just got a calling that, hey, all the kids are back to school. Why don't you try a full-time job and see what that feels like? And I jumped right in with hardly any preparation. Went for my first interview. Deliberately didn't wear a suit. There was a lot of resistance, but I just surrendered. Went in with shorts, worn out pair of shoes, t-shirts. Didn't do up my LinkedIn profile, anything like that. And if they like me for who I am versus of who I the mask I put on myself, then fantastic. If not, that's perfect too. And the first thing he asked is like, Gary, it's interesting. Like your LinkedIn is like, based on your LinkedIn profile, why are you applying for this job? I said I didn't fancy it up. I didn't dress it up. I just got a calling to apply for it, and that was it. And I think the second question to ask is, I want to learn more about like your psychedelic experiences. Like, and again, I didn't pull any posts down, and like that's authentically me, and that's it. But after a few months, like at the end of May, I got a calling to like this was it. And it just magically transitioned from because I committed to helping this. When I got the job, I told the person that interviewed me, the CEO, I said, my calling to come here is not to help your company, is to help you for whatever reason. So whatever you need, I'm here to assist. So at the same breath, I didn't want to let him down because I know that I've committed to helping him. So I just let the universe continue to guide me. But as a result, they were actually having changes in the business. They're going to fundraising. So they said, Gary, like, can we reduce your commitment to us? Can we maybe like get your help on an ad hoc basis? And I'm like, yes. So I think part of him was cautious not to hurt me or disappoint me, but inside I was screaming with joy. And so we're both in alignment. And at the same time, I got a calling to get into coaching. And I'm going to get into today's guest as well. But for me, getting a calling to get into coaching and coaching people through the awakening journey and sharing my story, a beautiful soul that I've met once in Canada, connected to another beautiful soul back in Sydney, my hometown. Her name is Yummii Nguyen, and I haven't met her before, but just watching her posts that she shares on her social, especially on Facebook, there are people that just talk to talk, but you can sense that there's a degree of there's still work to be done, and the message is trying to sell a message in whatever they're trying to sell and promote. Whereas when I listen to Yummi's message, it's come up with love, with authenticity, and she knows who she is. She knows what her purpose is, and regardless of whether the message resonates with all, she knows that she is walking her path and doing what she's meant to do. So from there, I thought, man, it would be great to have her on our podcast and for me to learn more about her and what she does. And rather than just being greedy with it, let's start share with the community. Just to give you a little bit of a short bio about her. She's a mindset coach. She specializes in relationships, healing, and love. Her purpose and passion lives in empowering and guiding others to think clearly, bring compassion and understanding to their wounds, and show up in their relationship from a place of love and fear. I see her talk a lot about relationship from her role also as a mother, as parenting as well, and just how to navigate this world of awakening. So welcome, Yummii.
Oh, thank you, Gary, for that introduction. And I love how you started this podcast sharing about divine guidance, trusting it, allowing it, surrendering, receiving, and just the joy, when you're in alignment with that. So that was amazing. So thank you for the introduction. I'm so excited to be here with you.
How do you start on this spiritual journey? Did it start from young, or was it recent?
Yeah, this is so interesting. I think from a very young age, I knew I had a connection to something. I grew up in a very religious family. So I was indoctrinated into Catholicism, and I was indoctrinated into Buddhism, right? And I remember when I was really young, I would voluntarily read the Bible. And I just felt this deep connection to something bigger than me. I couldn't describe it, and I didn't share with it with anyone. And I've had my first mystical experience at 7 years old. And I'm by myself, and I remember this so vividly. I'm standing in this playground, and I'm standing there, and then all of a sudden I just tune into my body, and I'm like, I believe there's a version of me over there. And I had this experience of a spirit or soul, maybe mine, I'm not sure. It lifted out of my body and flew. And I could see her watching me, watching her. And then in the next moment, she came back, I opened my eyes, and I thought, was that real? Even till this day, it sends chills down my spine and all over my body. I never thought anything of it. Now, when I was growing up, my dad's a Buddhist monk, and our house was a temple. I would see people come in and out of the temple. They would pray, do their thing, and then go back to life, and nothing's changed. I saw parents that weren't great with their children. I saw husbands that weren't great with their wives. I saw wives that weren't great with their husbands. And there was this real disconnect for me. And even when I was growing up in my own family, there was my dad, the Buddhist monk, and he was amazing with people. He was such an incredible guide, but yet he had his own demons. And so who he was as a guide and as a teacher was different to who he was as a husband and a father. And so I was really confused about spirituality and religion, to be quite honest. And so, you veer away from it. But then I had my spiritual awakening if we can call it that. Um, Pretty much when I had my divorce. So I'm 29 years old. I was married for not even a year and a half, maybe a bit over. And in the Asian culture, Gary, that's like a lot of shade, right? And up until that age, I did everything they told me to do. Go get good grades, go to university, get the grad job, climb the ladder, make the money. I mean, I think you're familiar with that story, right? And then here I am at 29 and I could not make my marriage work. It was bizarre to me, and it was like the thing that I really wanted to make work. Does this make sense?
Yeah. What do you try to what path do you go through? Like, do you see counselor? Do you like read books?
At that time, both my ex-husband and I were going through a really an amazing personal development program run by Landmark Education, right? So we're both doing a Landmark thing, and what opened up was how we weren't authentically ourselves in our life. And you come to this standpoint where I remember my ex-husband and I opposite each other, and we acknowledge that 50% of the time we're happy, and 50% of the time, like, we're horrible to each other. And it wasn't personal, right? And the other thing that we could see was that for me to be happy, he had to accept me for who I am, but he couldn't. And there were these words that he whispered, which was, don't whisper, but he said that was so great. He said, there's the woman that I thought I'd married. I was entrepreneur. I was always like out there. I'm just not domesticated. And he said, yeah, if I told the truth to myself, I thought you'd change. And that's when the penny dropped, where I thought, for him to be happy, he can't be with someone like me. And I can't be happy and fulfilled if that someone doesn't choose me. Does this make sense?
Yeah. So very often we would still resort to a very 3D perspective. Oh well, we didn't match. It was him. Like, he had these bad habits or personality. We just weren't right for each other. And occasionally your friends may spring in certain like spiritual wisdom. Oh, you guys just not meant to be together. Whatever things. The right one is bound to be on the way. But at which point do you connect from a higher perspective of looking at it?
This is really great. When I connected to my heart and I thought, am I willing to do what makes this marriage work? I said no. And I can love myself for that. There was no more force, there was no more push, there was no more hustle. There was peace. And I remember connecting, like hearing this voice where it said, did you finally get the message? And the message was this. The message was, you're worthy of love as you are. And so I had to look back on all my relationships, and I understood that I'm the common denominator. And there was this pattern in my relationships where I thought I had to be a certain person to be in that relationship. And I remember this download from the universe where it said, there is no greater gift than having your love be received by the other person, free from judgment, free from needing to change it, just receiving the love you give. I grew up thinking that the person that gives is the hero. But the actual hero in the relationship is the one that has the most courage and vulnerability to receive. And so I remember this really pivotal moment, knowing that my ex-husband served a purpose in my life, which was for me to come home to myself, to love myself more, to break that generational pattern, to be able to quantum leap into something different. And I recognized this because, my lineage, no one in our lineage had healthy relationships. They made a lot of money. They had great businesses. But there's like infidelity, different children from different people. Like, it was just insane. Or like not being able to communicate with each other. And so I knew I broke that cycle. And that was when I started hearing and connecting to this higher power. And that was over a decade ago now. Yeah.
Wow. That's incredible. A lot of people ask or think, why does it take, usually in the form of a crisis, for people to wake up? Like, if someone like try to tell you nicely while like the external life is great, hey, you need to be more authentic. It's like fuck you. Like, my life is great right now. Like I'm not changing for anything. But through the way society or ego self perceived as significant loss, a negative event, but from a spiritual way of looking at it, like if we had the podcast right now, at the end of it, we wouldn't say, oh man, that shouldn't have happened, we divorced, like we split up from our podcast. Well, there are some people that you just meant to have that conversation, and maybe you'll rekindle that later on, like, or maybe you won't, but it doesn't matter. It's just in the present moment. So there's a lot of lenses that we put on the labeling of marriage and divorce, and yeah, good on you for breaking that chain, and that and usually it's for future generations as well. I want to go back to something you said. The person that has the courage in a relationship is the one that has the courage to receive love. Can you give some example, or give one example that explains that point?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in a relationship, actually, even your children, right? Do you know why we love our children? When they're young, they don't judge the love we give. They receive it, they feel it, and we know it, right? But when we are in an adult relationship, yeah, there's always someone that's an overgiver. And that overgiver is like, I'm giving you so much, I'm giving you so much, I'm giving you so much. But when you don't love, and you don't know how to love the one you love, your love wounds the other. It's no different to a plant. If a plant's dying but you're overwatering it, you're like, but I'm giving you love, I'm giving you love, but the plant can't receive it. And so a lot of the times when we give love, we're fixing something, or out of obligation, or in order to, or with expectation. So it's really easy to give. It's harder to receive. When you're receiving, you are in the energy of, I'm worthy to receive this. I don't need to give anything back. I don't owe them. I can receive this free from strings attached, free from needing to prove myself. And here's a prime example. When you meet women and you say to them, oh, you look beautiful today, what's the first thing they do? A lot of them go, oh no, I really, like, they can't receive it. You give someone a present, especially in the Asian culture, they're like, oh, why'd you spend so much money for? You should have saved that. Is this hitting home, right? But when you give love to your children, they don't question it when they're young. But because we're so wounded of knowing, of thinking that we're not enough, or there's something unworthy, we don't trust love when it's given to us. So that's why the hero is the one that receives, because to be able to trust love when it's given and receive, you need to know who you are. And you need to lean in to your vulnerability and courage. And that's so hard for a lot of people.
Yeah, there's some profound and deeper insights that you've shared. Why I say deep, it's when I first started the journey of wanting to fix, heal, improve whatever words that you want to attach to the notion of trying to grow the relationship, you can get lost in the world of like tactics and strategies and even the love languages. Okay, well, giving, maybe it's not their love language that you're giving it to, and it makes all of that works a lot of sense, and depends on what stage that the listener is at, or that person is at. It may be the trick to heal the wound, or to deliver to that person. But very often, like if you're listening to this right now, there's a high chance that you're going through an awakening, a spiritual journey. Like from my experience and observation, a lot of those tactics and strategy, whether it's Dr. Phil and whoever else, like Dr. John Gray, Mars, men are from Venus, or men are from Mars, women are from Venus, like all of that serve to a certain level. It's just like learning how to like go to school, get good grades and get a good job. That will serve you to a certain level. But what you shared is about how to receive deeply and truly, is another level up. If you feel that some of the things that you've tried and none of those tactics and strategies work, is probably because there's certain innate healing work that needs to be done. Is that right?
Yeah, I think with marriages, there's one key thing is this. There's a lack of connection. Right, let's talk about it from a practical perspective. Let me give you an example. Have you had many parents say, "I'm doing all of this for you. You're so ungrateful." But that's not what the children wanted. That's not what the partner wanted. The partner and wife or husband is saying, I just wanted your time. So when the love you give isn't from a connected place, it can't be received. Right? Receivership is so hard because it requires you to put aside what you think they want and they need, and actually go to what is their heart asking for. A lot of the times we give to fix someone else, or because we want to be the good person, based on a blueprint of what we grew up, not recognizing we don't see the other person. Receivership is the manifestation of actually seeing, hearing, and understanding the person you're in relationship with. And if the person that you're giving to doesn't feel that you see them, you hear them, you understand them, they can't receive your love. But yet here's the irony. When you are in a spiritual journey and you love yourself so much, you're not seeking understanding from that other person. You're not seeking to be seen by the other person. You're not seeking to be heard by the other person. You're seeking to be seen, heard, and understood by you, with your higher self. That is a different level of love now. Because when you're so whole for yourself, you can really actually receive love how other people give it.
Wow. So if you used to the patterns of being the giver, or the one that gives more in the relationship, what's the tips, or how do you shift from? Is it spending more time receiving? Is that the key, or is that are there any insights that you can share?
Yeah, we want to be able to look at both from the psychology point of view, the biology, and the spiritual point of view, right? I think a lot of us that go on this journey of inner work, we either only focus on the mindset or like the spiritual, but it needs to be an integrated experience. So literally, to heal the pattern of overgiving, right? We need to understand, well, what is your story about giving? What is your story about overgiving? What is your story about receiving? And a lot of times it might be something like, well, I'd rather be the giver than the taker. I don't want to be selfish. I want to save people, right? Now, the irony is this: a relationship is about giving and receiving. But we have been brought up in a paradigm that relationships are about giving and taking. Now you're not in love, you're in fear, you're in survival. And then even that concept of giving comes from your mind. Does this make sense? But when you give from your heart, it's from a very different space. And so to heal that pattern, you got to understand, like, how do I move in showing up for my relationship from doing it from my mind to my heart? And understanding that there is some version of me in time and space, an inner child. Maybe I watched my parents and said, I don't want to be the taker, so I'm going to be the giver. And I created an identity to survive this world. Does this make sense?
Yeah. I like what you said about the difference between giving and taking, which is what most of us perceive in a relationship. And when you give too much, there's a tendency to say, oh, this person just take. Whether it's in a business relation, intimate relationship, or parenting relationship. But giving and receiving, what you shared is giving is love, receiving is also love. Yeah. It's like you are dancing in both sides of love. I remember there's a story about when the Buddha, he didn't have any money, and when he needed food, he'd go knock on doors for food, and most people would perceive it as this person is begging. And begging is needy, is need to take from other people. But he basically said that I'm giving an opportunity for someone to give the gift of giving. Yeah. If one household doesn't want to give, perfect. I'll go to give this gift to the next door.
Yeah. It's so key that we touch on this point of giving and receiving, because, you know, like, especially with children, a lot of parents go, I do all of this for you. Why are you so ungrateful? You know, and I get it. I get that's really 3D. I get it, you know. But when we can understand that there is so much courage that it takes to receive, the way that we give is like with gratitude. It's like, thank you for allowing me to love you. You know, we don't take that for granted. I don't take for granted that my husband receives my love, that I get the opportunity to give that to him. And then I don't take for granted that my children receive my love and I get to give love. You know, I believe that there is no higher purpose than to being in love with our life, and to be in love with your life. The highest purpose is knowing that you can give. But you can't give if no one's receiving. So in actual fact, my husband and my children are allowing me to be on this journey. And that's why I'm so grateful for them choosing me. Now, when you have that context, how do you show up in relationships, right? It's from a very different space.
Yeah, wow. Paradigm shift.
Yeah.
Wow, that's good. I like it. So, when I like it when you talk, you're like a poetry in motion. Have you like I call it, like, I would imagine that a lot of it seems like it's downloading, channeling, whatever you like to call. Have you always, well, since your awakening, have you always like tapped into this, or did it come gradually?
It wasn't even conscious. You know, I started hearing this stuff, and then I'm like, oh, this is fun. And I just continued receiving, right? And that's the same relationship for those on this journey of awakening and connecting to your higher self. Whatever pattern you think like whatever patterns that hold you back, like, people will be like, I'm unworthy to have this connection. I need to be more. I need to prove myself. But your higher self's like, I just want to give to you. You're blocking the receivership, but I will love you and meet you where you're at. And so just this gift, which I'm so grateful for, has just been this relationship that I've cultivated and leaned in and trusted. And I just continue to do so because it just felt so extraordinary to live from my heart. Way more than living from my mind. Now, I love my mind. It's great for strategy, analytics, practical things. But when it comes to relationships, your mind has no place. Your mind can invent things. Your mind can solve business challenges. But your mind isn't interested in connection. It's your heart. And when you live from your heart, you like just access this like incredible power that's beyond you. So yeah, that's how I cultivated it.
Well, I know that you work with quite a few people in helping them cultivate, like leading from the heart. Are there any practices that daily practice that you recommend people do?
Yeah, this is one that I tell my clients to do, and it's so simple, right? Whenever you're hijacked, okay, because I think it's so important to be grounded in your body. Now, whenever you're hijacked, the moment that you want to yell at your child or be in conflict with your partner and you want to stonewall or defend or what have you, there's this one practice. You place your hand on your heart and you literally do the box breathing, right? You breathe in for 4, you hold for 4, you breathe out for 4, and you hold for 4. This technique is what the Navy SEALs use to be able to get clarity in the moment, right? From a science level, you're slowing down your adrenaline, cortisol. From a biology level, you're actually recognizing the chemical reactions that's going through your body. Because you're not reacting to that person, that place, or that thing. You're reacting to a chemical reaction. And so when you can slow down your breath, but from your heart and connect, now you're tapping into a higher source. And then in this moment, you have a choice. What would my heart say? What would love do? Now you've got free will. And so this practice of coming back to the heart by breath is really powerful, really easy. It's so easy that people don't do it. But it is a thing that's going to change your physiology and allow your cells to create a new baseline to be able to relate in love.
Nice. What about cultivating more self-love?
Yeah. I think basically the question that I give my clients when they do this exercise of the box breathing is, what would love do and what would be loving to me in this moment? What would be loving to me in this moment? So I know my pattern in relationships is, if you're interested in your relationships, look up Dr. John Gottman. But I love being science into this because it makes us understand better. And Dr. John Gottman talks about 4 habits that will destroy any relationship. 1 is stonewalling. Like, you build your walls up, you shut down, you don't let them in. That's a pattern of mine. 2 is contempt. So that's like rolling your eyes, being sarcastic. 3 is criticism, right? And the 4th one is defensiveness. Now, we got to understand that as an infinite spiritual being having a human experience, your patterns don't go away. They're your survival patterns. So these 4 patterns that we have are almost like a back off, right? Don't come close. I need to win over you. Or it's a competition. We make our partner the enemy, but they're not. So when you're cultivating self-love, it's in these moments that you're hijacked in your patterns. You come back to your heart and you go, what would be loving to me? Well, I have this sensation that I want to stonewall. What would be loving to me is to actually go up to my partner, hold his hand, reach out and say, I'm feeling really lonely. I need you. You're not doing it for him. You're doing it for you. And so these acts that are practical in your relationships allow you to have more love for you. Does this make sense? And they sound so simple, but they're so hard. Like, even like people saying, like, you know, someone asking you something and you're flustered, right? You know you want to say no, but you say yes out of obligation. But then if you paused and place your hand on your heart and you say, what would be loving to me right now? To say no. And being able to do that, to honor who you are.
You say sometimes the simple action or simple remedy, it's so obvious people don't do it, or forget about it. What do you think is the reason for that?
Oh, we're so addicted to our minds. Our mind loves complex problems. It's designed that way. It's magnificent. We are addicted to problems. But your relationship isn't a problem to solve. Your relationships is connection. Yeah, acceptance, connection. Your mind can't do that. Your mind can think about forgiveness, but it doesn't know how to forgive. Your mind can think about love, it doesn't know how to love, or create more problems on why you're not loved. And so we make it complicated for ourselves because we're so addicted to bringing the mind into our relationships. Your partner isn't a problem to solve or a game to win. Your children aren't something to fix. And so when you bring your mind into any of your relationships, you're seeing it from a lens of, what do I have to fix? Where's the problem? Where's the challenge? How do I win this?
Yeah. You're making the mind the master instead of the servant. From a science standpoint, the heart was created in a little baby before the brain was created. The heart sends more signal to the brain, 8 times more signal to the brain than the brain sends to the heart. So if you let that be the leader, then you'll start to not dismiss the mind, but you'll start to live a more heart-driven life, one that is more aligned to what you're here to do.
Yeah. Especially in your relationships, right? Like, I love my mind. I think it's got a brilliant, strategic, analytical mind. But you have to know how to use the tools. I don't want to bring my mind into my relationships because I know there's only one outcome, and that's disconnection.
So we've talked a bit about especially intimate relationships. I want to ask you, like, what has motherhood taught you? What have your kids taught you?
Oh my gosh, they're my teachers every single day. I'm so blessed with my kids. You know, if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have this access to spirit like I do. Can I share with you a really big moment in my spirituality?
No, you can't. Okay, you've convinced me now. Yes, you can.
So, Gary, you know, before I had my first son, Avery, you know, I was on the spiritual path. I was an entrepreneur. And I was seeking this thing called wholeness. You know, how do I feel good about myself? How do I feel whole? And I was seeking it and seeking it and seeking it. You know, and I even created this exercise for myself called 1,000 Days of Daring Greatly. I wanted to understand, here's wholeness, here's where I am. Like, when am I in wholeness and when am I not? So 3 weeks into motherhood, and once again, I could see how my mind was trying to get me to wholeness. 3 weeks into motherhood, I'm standing in the kitchen. Our little boy's in bed. It's morning. I had a shower. I'm looking out of our balcony window and I'm making myself a hot breakfast. And I had this visceral, cellular experience. It's like, I'm whole. And in this moment, I really got that my son loves me for me. He didn't care how much money my business was making. He didn't want anything else from me besides for me to love him as he is, and that he loves me for me. I didn't need to have a clean house. I didn't have to have XYZ business deals. There was nothing that he needed and wanted besides me. And I remember in this moment, I was like, wow, God damn, you're successful. You had a shower, you put the kids to bed, and you're making yourself a hot breakfast. Gary, like, I could never have said that to myself. You know, my worth and my value was based on my bank balance, my business, who I knew, who I spoke to, what I did. Before Avery, I was so addicted to proving myself. So my kids teach me each and every day wholeness. My kids teach me each and every day this connection to love, to forgiveness, to compassion. Like, it's remarkable how in their energy and in their love, like, I become a better person. They're so forgiving. They're so compassionate. There's so much joy. You know, they don't wake up and criticize themselves or judge themselves or compare themselves. They love who they are. They get angry, they get upset, they snatch, they hit. But in the next moment, it's like, you know, how can I bring more love to this? And I think that's remarkable with kids. And so I believe when we are on this journey of like a spiritual awakening, we're literally going back to those moments, but in an adult body.
Yeah. When you can see in the eyes of just wonder, looking into around the room, whether it's for the first time or for the 50th time, it's like, wow, oh wow, like this, just in awe with everything.
Yeah.
And not having any labels or attachments to what they're seeing. Is everything is like, wow. So I want to ask you, as someone that's in an awakening soul, how would you parent your kids differently, knowing there's a lot of conditioning on how a parent should be, how we should raise our kids, and how to lead them through this path? Because
so interesting.
we went through the path of homeschooling and this and that, so I went through my own learning, but I'm interested to hear other people what their take on how they should raise their kids.
Yeah. So I don't raise my kids, I raise myself. There's no timeline. And I grew up very much, you had to be a certain person, you had to achieve certain things. I know that all I need to do, the only job I have, is to love who I am. And inside of that, I hold space. In that space, they show up in their brilliance and in their authenticity. We are so guided by them in our parenting. Now, people are going to look at that. I know my parents, I know other people, our family, like, you know, they think we're crazy. And they believe that the parents know better. No. These souls came. They know who they are. We got to create space for them to live that and manifest that out in this three-dimensional reality. Our job, our only job in parenting, is to be in our heart, to be so connected with ourselves so that we can hold space for them. Now, I want to share something remarkable with you. You know, our eldest son is 6 years old. He basically chose his preschool and he also chose his school, right? And we gave him choice. Now, the thing was, you know, the preschools and the schools, like we follow a philosophy called Steiner, because it's all about, you know, spirituality. Now, maybe one day it doesn't suit him anymore. We're not attached. But we have not sat down and taught him his ABCs or 1, 2, 3s. We don't actually actively teach him anything. He taught himself how to read. So the other day, he comes to me and goes, "Hey, Mum, I'm going to read to you." And I'm like, holy crap, like, how did he do that? You know? And so our job as a parent is to get out of the way. They know what they need. But to respond to their energy, we need to be so still in our heart and in our knowing so that we can trust them. We can't trust them when we don't trust ourselves, and you don't trust yourself if you don't love yourself. So my only job as a parent is to be filled up, so overflowing, so I can hold space. And that's it.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, I definitely resonate with the same approach. Prior to my awakening, I feel in order for me to be complete or feel a remote sense of completeness, I need to be helping hundreds of millions of people. But after or during the awakening, it's if all I'm here to do in this lifetime is just to raise my own consciousness and not help a single person in my external actions, then so be it. Because I know that will have ripple effect anyway through the vibration that of lifting my own consciousness. I went through all the started with the homeschooling, and it started off with having a timetable, very structured, teaching school at home. Then a few months in, moved on to unschooling, which is kind of like what you alluded to, like teach them nothing. And again, in the Asian circles especially, it's like unheard of, like you're crazy. And then moved on to world schooling, like let's just travel around the world, have fun, and go to museums and stay on the farms and connect with nature. And then it moved on to cosmic schooling, connects with the higher powers, like being able to see without their eyes and stuff like that. But now it's like, you know what? Because of COVID, like, well, we're not world schooling anymore. We're not doing anything. Like, why? My wife says, like, why not send them back to school? And I always say that she's like the voice of truth, and it's like, well, let's again just surrender, just go with the flow. Who's to say that it's not my kids' desire, their soul's desire, to have this human experience? Because if you never had the human experience, how do you transcend beyond it? How do you do what you're supposed to do? My youngest son, he's 11 now, and I know that his through numerology and different readings, his job is to bring fun to this world. If I'm trapping him in homeschooling, which he was still like playing with other homeschooling kids, but for whatever reason he wasn't gelling with other homeschooling kids. He didn't find that the one friend or a group of friends to bond with. So now that he's going back to school, he's loving school. And I think in the sense that his mission is to bring fun to the world. If the more people I'm touching, which is where the majorities are going to school, then that's where he's doing his business. So I find it interesting that when you get to learn about both like what you shared about how to a philosophy about parenting is not so much should I take action A or action B. Is not to yell or not yell, to go to this school or that school. Yes, you can do all that, but it's where you're coming from. It's coming from the place of love. And on top of that, when you start to understand what the individual life purpose is, it's like, wow, like how do you best guide them? And their purpose, like for most of them, didn't come here to be an accountant or to be a mechanic or to be whatever that or to be an entrepreneur, even for that matter as well.
Let me touch on something, Gary. We use something in our family based on it's this concept called human design and gene keys, right? So that I remember when Avery came along, you know, John and I, there were the parents that we wanted to be and the thought of the kid that we're going to have. And then Avery comes along. We're like, wow, this is so different to what we thought. And we just responded to him. And we knew that his nature and his energy was not the majority. And we trusted that. Now, we got a lot of crap from it, right? Like, and I understand, like, it's just a 3D thing, doing the 3D thing. But we just had this intuition that's like, hey, Avery's different. His energy's different. What does his energy need? And it was amazing because a few years after that, I came across human design and gene keys, and I was like, it makes sense. He has a specific energetic design where he can't do a lot. He has to be really protected in his energy because he doesn't have a certain energy center that he's connected to that has sufficient, consistent, like, energy to do. Whereas my husband and I, our designs are very much do, go, go, go. We can survive on 5 hours sleep. Our son doesn't have that. So here I was wanting this vision of like going on hikes, going on holidays, doing all this stuff. And there's this child here that is quite like, his energy is really within. Now, one, if I didn't pick this up, I would have thought there's something wrong with him. And two, if I wanted to fix him, his spirit would have been crushed and destroyed. Does this make sense?
Yes, makes perfect sense.
And so because John and I have always made this point of like, what would love do? We're able to perceive it. Now, human design and gene keys gave us like the validation almost, and even more insight into how we can move forward with Avery and support him.
Yeah, wow. So I'm conscious of your time. Thank you for all the things that you shared. If people wanted to learn more about your work, Yummii, how do they find you? And do you have courses? Do you have retreats?
Yeah, this is great. So my website's really out of date, but you can go onto my website and go to yummiinguyen.com, subscribe. I actually send out a weekly newsletter every week. I share a lot in my writing. They can also connect to me on Facebook, on my personal Facebook page. I run masterminds and group coaching. I do one-on-one VIP coaching, but that's limited spaces. But mainly I work with people through group coaching and masterminds.
And what's the theme of the group coaching and the mastermind?
So with the group coaching, it's healing generational wounds, like breaking cycles. So healing your inner child, reparenting, coming back into your heart. The masterminds are specific to creating this relationship with your higher self and knowing, just having a knowing that there's this incredible access and using it in your 3-dimensional reality, right? I think the thing with spirituality is that we're either too far out there and we want to escape, but we chose this human experience. So I'm really guiding people in my mastermind on being able to cultivate this connection with the higher self and bring it into your 3D reality.
Love it. Thank you so much. I appreciate
you. This conversation was amazing.
So if you haven't checked it out, I'm going to put Yummii's website on the show notes. So go check it out and follow her on Facebook. There's a lot of golden nuggets and wisdom to be absorbed on a regular basis. So love you, Yummii. Thank you.
Love you, Gary. Appreciate you.